Yeah, we're going to go through the signal flow for the Audient. And we're here in Studio I, and we're going to run through exactly what you guys need to do to pass the test and to get to T1. Good. Yeah. Got with me a Shure 55SH. This guy is not plugged in, but it looks cool. And he's going to help us out today. So, set up the console for a recording session. So let's I guess start getting into it. We got the Audient. This guy's already on. If you need to turn him on, there's a cool power switch around here. Cool. Now we need to come around the front and we need to go and power on some gear. Right up the top we've got a headphone amp. It's by Behringer. Does 4 channels of headphone amping. There's the power button. Underneath that, we've got a compressor. This guy limits dynamic range. You guys don't know what that even means yet, but you will. Then we've got a reverb. This is a Lexicon reverb, MX400. And then after that, we've got our interface, which is this guy down here. This is the most important piece of gear in the room. If you don't have it on, nothing works. Nothing. And we've got a patch bay, but we'll go through how to use that later. All right, so I think everyone hopefully is a little bit familiar with this. This is the Pro Tools dashboard. In here is where we give our sessions a name. So I'm going to call this. We need to make sure it's saved on the local storage. And we're going to go down here and we're going to check a few of these settings out. We've got some audio file types down here. Most of the time you're going to be wanting to run in broadcast wave, which is a WAV file. AIFF is the thing that Apple came up with that no one actually cares about. 44.1, 4882, yeah, all the things. I'm just going to run it in 4824 today, but the most important thing I want everyone to focus on is this. The last used I/O settings means that you'll import the last person's I/O settings into your session. You don't really want that, you just want to start from scratch. So we've made one for you, and this is the same with every studio we have here. I'm going to click on Audient I and make sure that it's saved in the student work folder. And I'm going to create it. Cool. So next door, we've already set up the microphone. It's been plugged into channel 1. I guess we can just skip forward and get into the actual Pro Tools session. I'll show you what's going on in the live room later. In your Pro Tools session, create a new mono audio track. So when creating tracks, we're going to go up to the track in the taskbar, and we're going to go to new. A cool thing for that is Shift-Command-N, so you can remember that. And if we have one microphone, we're obviously going to need one track. It's going to have to be mono, and we need an audio track, which is what we record audio to. We can run through later what these mean, but for now, what you need is audio track. I'm going to click Create, and this creates an audio track. This is what we'll be recording our sounds to. I'm going to make it big. I'm also going to rename it now. So according to the signal flow sheet, you have to name it to Sound Source 1, Take 1. So if I want to rename something in Pro Tools, where Audio 1 sits is the name. I'm going to right click there, go to Rename, give it a name. One, take. So we've just named our track. We've named it to Sound Source 1, Take 1. And we're going to set it to record a mic signal on the way in. The final thing that you need to do in Pro Tools, well, there's 2 final things. One of them is giving it the correct inputs and outputs. So far, we plugged into input 1 next door to our right, which is input 1. But I also need to give it a mono output. So the way that you set up for an analog console generally is mono ins, mono outs. That output that it's currently set of 1 and 2 would be good if you were using a laptop, but considering that we have 16 outputs on this desk, I'm going to make sure that I can use all of them. So in 1, out 1. If I had a second track, for example, I'll be doing in 2, out 2, so that they've got their own input and their own output. So we're only using one microphone today. Final thing I'm going to do is set it to record on. This is basically just telling Pro Tools I'm good to go, I'm ready, and it'll allow me to see signal coming in so I can meter it, make sure that I'm gain staging everything correctly.
Cool.
Right up the top is our microphone preamp section. So we're going to run through here real quick, just a couple of the buttons that you need to know. The one right under this blue pod here is a 48 volt button. That's fan and power. We need that for condenser microphones. Right above that, we've got our gain pot. This is basically just an amplifier. We turn it up to get the microphone louder. If you have a quiet sound source, you turn it up more. If you have a loud sound source, you won't need to turn it up as much. All right, to the right of that, we've got a little circle with a line through it. That is a polarity switch. As you get into stereo miking, you're going to learn more about that. But for now, don't stress too much about it. The final thing to check, which is always a good thing to know, is that it's a high pass filter. If you have that engaged, you will have no bass frequencies in your signal. And if you're recording something like bass, it's not super helpful. So if something sounds thin and you can't understand why, make sure that button isn't pressed. Next step, we need to assign which input in Pro Tools we want our signal going to. So we go to the assignment section. In this particular room, we can run 16 inputs. But today we only need one. So if I want to assign channel 1 to input 1 in Pro Tools, I'm going to click 1.
Damn.
Now I'm going to turn up the microphone gain until we start to see some signal. If you see that top light happening, that means we're at clip. So I'm going to turn that back down to make sure we're not clipping. Next step, we're going to work our way down to the channel path fader. So it's important to know the difference between channel path and monitor path, which is the fader that's under it. Channel path, this feeds Pro Tools and sets the level at which it hits Pro Tools. The large fader underneath that is our monitor path fader, which is the signal coming back out of Pro Tools, or our mix fader. So if we need to set up signal going into Pro Tools, we need to work on this fader. That's our channel path fader. And I'm going to start turning it up to 0, otherwise known as unity. Now if we look left to Pro Tools, we should have some signal. Beautiful. So that's question 4. So we need to now listen to it coming back out of Pro Tools. So now it's time for these set of faders. These are our monitor path faders. So next step that we're up to now, we need to get the signal coming back out of Pro Tools, and we're going to listen to it. So I'm just going to make sure that everything's set up fine. We need to look at these set of faders. First step is bring the fader up to unity. So the next step after we've moved our large fader up to unity for the monitor path is we need to assign it to the mix bus. You can see that there's 2 mix bus buttons. One is so that we can monitor the monitor path, and one is so that we can monitor the channel path. There's a big difference between the two, and what you want to always be doing is monitoring your signal off tape, which means after Pro Tools. So we're not going to ever worry about that mix button. Let's listen to that one. We need to now move right across the desk, and we're going to go to this guy. This is our master fader. We're going to make sure that we turn it all the way to the top, and that's at unity. Final step, which is one thing that is really important, is everything actually turned on. Speakers. And now we need to turn it up so we can hear it. It's a big red knob right in the center of the desk. Main monitors. Five, set up a pair of headphones in the studio and send a post MTR/DAW signal of your microphone signal being recorded via an auxiliary send. Let's do that. These faders here, these are our monitor path faders. This small fader above it is our channel path fader. Then we enter an equalization section. We're not going to worry about that just yet. but we're going to focus on the section just above it, so just beneath the assignment section. This is called our auxiliary section. We've got 6 green knobs and 2 blue ones. The 6 ones are mono auxiliary sends. The mono auxiliary sends we're going to use later for things like reverbs, maybe a parallel compression. But the ones under that, QA and QB, are what we're going to use for our headphone sends. So I'm going to begin this by turning both Qs up on the channel that I would like to use, QA and QB. I'll explain why I'm using 2 in a moment. Also, we need to remember to hit the pre-fader button. I'll demonstrate what that button is doing in a moment after this whole setup is complete.
Could you point to it?
This pre-fader button here. Cool. Yeah, so next step, just like all of our faders have a master fader, all of our auxiliaries have master auxiliaries. So we have to go to our master auxiliary section, which is just here, and make sure that we have our QA and our QB masters turned up. So next section after we've done the auxiliary masters is we need to move down to the foldback section. Just like at a live show, when you're on stage, you'll see wedges in front of you. They're called foldbacks. And we can apply the same kind of idea to the console. So the foldback in this instance is what's folding back to the artist or the set of headphones. So in order to get a true stereo send over to the headphones, we're going to use both QA and QB, which is how we've set it up so far, where QA is our left signal and QB is our right signal. So back over on channel 1 here, we can now think of this as our left ear in the headphones and QB as our right ear in the headphones. Okay. And after we've assigned QA and QB in the foldback section, we just need to turn up its master. And if I solo this off so I can actually hear the headphone mix and turn it up, we're actually now listening to the headphone mix. A good way to check that it's actually getting to the headphone amp too is to go over to the rack and have a look at the rack. If you are getting metering on the rack, then it's working. And what you should always be doing on every session is bringing a set of headphones with you, plugging it directly into the amp and actually listening to what the artist is hearing. Have a listen to what the artist is actually doing. So we're up to the recording part. They can hear what they want to hear in the headphones. I've set all the microphone levels right. Everything looks good. It's time to hit record. So back to Pro Tools, a cool thing that we can check is up here where the record button is. You can see that it's currently just a red dot. That is just normal record mode. Underneath that, you've got some different modes that it might be a good thing to check before you record what you're actually using. A good mode that I use quite a lot is Quick Punch. It allows you to do drop-ins and it's also just a standard recording function. So I'm going to click on that, and if I have a little P in there, then I'm happy and I think I'm good to go. So now that we're in Quick Punch mode, it's time to record. Back to the beginning, I'm going to go to the top, click my record button, and then click play. You can see now we're recording signal. So we've just created our second audio track. Now we need to go in and reassign it in Pro Tools so we can record the same microphone signal but to a different track in Pro Tools now for multiple takes, for example. So I just need to, sorry. So we're going to get our second track that we've created and rename it by right-clicking on Audio 1 to rename. We're going to call this Sound Source 2 Take 2. 2. And now we're good to go to record on this second track. So I'm going to give it input 2 and output 2. And unarm record the first one. Now it's time to arm record the second one. Now we've plugged the microphone next door into channel 1. But it's very easy to reassign that to channel 2. We don't need to go next door to unplug anything. We can just go up the top of the desk. So if we have a look at the assignment section on the desk, like I said, 1 doesn't always have to go to 1. And it's as simple as turning 1 off and now assigning channel 1 to input 2 in Pro Tools. And if we look at Pro Tools now, even though we've got input 2, channel 1 is still feeding it. So now it's time to record our second track, and we're going to record it alongside the first one. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the session by hitting return on my keyboard, and I'm going to hit record. Now this time, instead of going to record and play, because I'm in quick punch mode, I'm going to use my keyboard with a cool shortcut, which is 3 on the numpad. And we're now recording. Second last question. We're up to perform a drop-in for a period of 10 seconds over one of the tracks you have previously recorded. This is otherwise known as a punch-in. So I'm going to find out which part of the track I actually want to do the drop-in on. The whole point of the drop-in is if there was a mistake. So let's say somewhere around here in the middle of my recording, there was a bad drum fill or a bad note or just a wrong thing. I want to fix it. If I was to drop in the recording right where the mistake was, is that a good idea?
Nah.
Probably not. It won't allow the musician enough time to get ready for it. So generally you always want to take it a few bars back, hit play so that they can hear what they're about to record over. And as soon as you're ready to drop them in the bottom right of the keyboard, we're going to hit 3 again for punch in. And when you're ready, drop them out. No, that's a punch in. So the final part of the signal flow is we need to get the second microphone up, and this is going to be an ambience mic. Luckily, I have this really trusty Shure microphone here. Oh. So the next step is we need to plug the microphone in. Over there in the junction box, we're going to plug it into channel 2, and I'm also going to get it into that 57. So once you've got your ambient mic plugged in, and it's plugged into a different channel than the first mic, we're going to head next door and have a listen to see what it sounds like. All right, so we're going to go back to the console now. We have 2 mics, so we need 2 channels. I'm going to assign channel 1 and 2 both to the mix bus. I'm going to have the small fader, otherwise known as the channel path fader, up to unity on both. I'm going to go correct my channel 1 assignment back to channel 1, and I'm going to assign channel 2 to channel 2. I'm going to turn both of my gain pots up, and now it looks like we've got signal on both, which is good. And in Pro Tools, I'm going to record arm. So now that we've got our second microphone set up, the sheet asks us to combine both microphone signals down into one signal within Pro Tools. So it's very easy to sum on this console. Some consoles it's a little bit more difficult, but this one is extremely easy. We're going to go up to the top of the console, and now that we've got channels 1 and 2 both connected next door, that doesn't mean that I have to assign them to 1 and 2 individually. I can also assign them both to 1, therefore combining the signals together. I'm going to head down now and make sure that my small faders are turned up. I'm also going to go down and make sure that both 1 and 2 are assigned to my mix bus. In this instance, we really only need 1 because we're summing them together. And I'm going to turn up channel 1. Now back up to the top of the console again, I just need to make sure that I'm gain staging them correctly together. And you can blend them together here or down on your small faders depending on how you like the sound of the blend together. So after we've blended our 2 mics together, it's time to record again. So I'm simply just going to hit record in Pro Tools, and now we're recording a blend of the 2 signals together with very terrible gain staging. And you can see here in Pro Tools, we've now recorded a signal. It looks good. Good. Okay, now it's time to pack up and leave. So now it's time to pack up and leave and go home. The first thing we need to do is make sure that our monitors are turned off. Now we're going to head over to Pro Tools. So now that we've done our recording, it's time to save and quit Pro Tools. We've turned off our monitors. Now it's time to go to File, Save, and then Pro Tools, quit Pro Tools. Sorry. You can now find your work in the student work folder. Today's Audient run through is in there. Please make sure that you take the whole folder and not individual parts. Just grab the whole folder and pull it onto a hard drive if you have one. It'll keep everything together and you won't end up with lost files. Next step, Pro Tools is quit, monitors are off. We need to normalize the console. So starting from the top, gain pots down, channel assignments turned off, any auxiliaries we used turned down, any EQ we used normalized, faders down, and mix buttons unassigned. So all buttons up, all faders down. Over on the right of the console, we're going to make sure that our master fader is turned down. We're also going to make sure that our level is turned down, our auxiliary masters are turned down, and our foldback is normalized. Once you've done all these steps, it should be fairly normalized. Finally, it's time to turn off the gear. So just starting from the top to the bottom, I'm going to turn the headphone amp off, the compressor off, the lexicon reverb off, and the interface off. Most of the time, it's okay to leave the computer on as long as you go to the Apple logo and go to sleep. Let's go pack down a live room.